You stand in a narrow corridor deep inside the Forbidden City, the year 1720. Imperial yellow coats the walls, but the air tastes of jasmine and fear. Your silk slippers glide across polished stone as you follow the elderly eunuch ahead, his shadow trembling in the candlelight. At 18, you have just been chosen as one of the emperor's new concubines. The eunuch halts and turns, his gaze a strange blend of pity and professional detachment. "Listen carefully, child," he murmurs, voice lost beneath the distant trickle of fountain water. "What I tell you now will decide whether you live or die here. These are not empty rituals or quaint traditions," he warns. "They are the invisible bonds that hold every woman who enters the Son of Heaven's chambers." Your heart hammers against your ribs as the illusion of imperial splendor slips away. The true rules of the harem are sterner and stranger than any tale you imagined. The first rule is absolute. Never turn your back on the emperor. It sounds simple until you understand its demand. When the emperor enters, you must position yourself so you face him at all times, while dressing, moving, even in the most intimate moments. Women who have survived here move like water, pivoting and gliding so their spines never betray them. Why? Because absolute power breeds paranoia. A ruler who oversees millions fears danger from the smallest hand. Concealed needles, hidden blades, poison at a fingertip. A back turn becomes an opportunity, a vulnerability that could cost a life. You learn from men. A concubine who has endured 3 years in the harem. She moves as if choreographed, her eyes never leaving the emperor's face. When she reaches behind her, she does so by turning in a smooth arc. She removes her robes in a single, flowing motion that keeps her body forever oriented toward him. The second rule is chilling. Speak only when spoken to, and then refer to yourself in the third person. You are not I here. You are this unworthy slave, this lowly concubine. Identity is stripped away the moment you cross the threshold. Language itself enforces submission. Over time, many women find they cannot even think in the first person when they are alone. Their inner life becomes colonized by the grammar of obedience. The third rule attacks the eyes. Never look the emperor directly in the face during intimacy. Fix your gaze just below his chin. This small act manufactures a semblance of submission while preventing true eye contact, which will reveal a soul or expose the emperor as merely a frightened man seeking to prove his divinity. If you meet his gaze by accident, you must immediately prostrate yourself and beg forgiveness. Repeated offenses don't earn death, but exile to the eunuch's quarters, a living warning to others. The fourth rule governs the act itself. Maintain absolute silence unless he commands otherwise. This, too, is control, another way the harem turns bodies into instruments of power. Your pleasure, your pain, even the rhythm of your breath must bend to his command. A cry that escapes on its own is forbidden. It implies that you possess an independent body, or beyond his control. Such a notion is intolerable. Enforcing this rule transforms intimacy into a chilling performance. Women learn to stifle every sound, to bite their tongues until they taste blood, to separate their minds from their bodies so completely that they become numb. Meanwhile, the emperor feeds on the power of forcing reaction. He may spend entire nights not pursuing pleasure but testing silence. Through endurance, through pain, through the simple proof that it eclipses their autonomy. Some break beneath this weight. Palace physicians give no name to the condition, but its mark is unmistakable. Women who cannot speak at all, even alone. They remain mute, hollowed into specters by the impossible demands of imperial desire. The fifth rule governs timing. The emperor's release must always come last, not out of consideration for his partner, but because his climax is seen as sacred. The restoration of cosmic order, the channeling of heaven's mandate. For a concubine to reach her peak first would imply her mortal pleasure outweighed divine will. Thus begins a nightmarish arithmetic. Women must suppress their own responses while tracking the smallest signs of the emperors. Many master the art of delay, distracting themselves with memorized verses or silent calculations as their bodies are used, forcing desire into submission. The sixth rule concerns the aftermath. Once the emperor finishes, the concubine must remain frozen in place until granted leave to move. This may last minutes or hours. She may not clean herself, shift for comfort, or betray any trace of unease. The emperor, by contrast, can rise, dress, drink, summon others. The imbalance is deliberate. She must remain exposed, her body marked with evidence of the encounter, until he decides she may reclaim it. The seventh rule binds pregnancy to politics. Any suspicion of conception must be reported immediately to the head eunuch. Failure to disclose means death. Reporting falsely earns a brutal beating. The result is a culture of constant vigilance. Women monitor every change in appetite, every miscycle, every fluctuation in energy. Their own bodies become enemies, sources of fear rather than strength. The unlucky misjudge and pay with scars. Those proven pregnant are instantly removed, isolated, watched day and night, not to shield them, but to safeguard the potential heir within. The woman becomes a vessel under surveillance, valuable only as long as she remains intact. The eighth rule poisons relationships among women. When multiple concubines are summoned, hierarchy dictates who leads, who assists, who competes. Sometimes they must serve as audience, other times as rivals in elaborate displays. This ensures they see one another not as allies, but as adversaries. Even true friendships are corroded. Women who once offered each other solace are forced to take part in one another's degradation, to smile through jealousy, to enact humiliation upon those they love. Bonds that might have fostered resistance are weaponized into tools of control. The ninth rule concerns the emperor's moods, and here lies the most impossible demand of all. Concubines must read his emotional state instantly and adjust their behavior without hesitation. A flicker of irritation, a shadow of melancholy, a spark of delight. Each requires a precise and flawless response. Any misstep risks not just disfavor but ruin. For in this world, perfection is not a virtue but a survival skill. If he is angry, they must soothe him without presumption. If he is sad, they must console him without pity. If he celebrates, they must mirror joy without overstepping into excess. To survive requires near superhuman emotional intelligence. Concubines become expert readers of human nature, interpreting the faintest flicker of expression, the smallest shift in posture, the shallowest change in breath. Their intuitive grasp of ego and power would humble modern diplomats. But the price of such mastery is devastating. They lose the ability to feel their own emotions honestly. The 10th rule is memory, and it is perhaps the cruelest of all. Concubines must remember every detail of their encounters with the emperor, his words, his gestures, what delighted him, what displeased him. Yet, the moment they leave his chambers, they must forget. Perfect memory inside, perfect amnesia outside. The strain of this split consciousness fractures many. Some develop intricate systems of mental files to compartmentalize experiences. Others break completely, suffering what we would now recognize as dissociative disorders. The 11th rule ties imperial desire to the calendar. The emperor's appetite follows the rhythms of the seasons and the state. During harvest, concubines must embody fertility and abundance. At winter solstice, they become symbols of light's return. In times of war, they must channel martial vigor. Each festival demands a new performance, forcing the women to reinvent themselves as living allegories, never individuals, always emblems. They study not just his private taste, but the cosmic and political weight of the year. They become actresses in a perpetual drama, a theater where the script changes with the stars and mistakes cost lives. The 12th rule exposes the voyeurism of power. Certain encounters must be witnessed by eunuchs or senior concubines, not for pleasure, but to ensure obedience. These observers record any slip, any sign of genuine emotion, any crack in the mask of duty. Thus is created a constant surveillance, a panopticon of intimacy. The women never know when they are watched, never know whose eyes track them. Authenticity itself becomes dangerous. Even in solitude, they maintain the facade, terrified that a witness lurks unseen. The 13th rule concerns gifts. Sometimes the emperor bestows jewels, silks, or delicacies, but every present carries invisible chains. Accepting a gift means accepting an unpayable debt. Gratitude must extend not only to the gift, but to the honor of being noticed. And every gift breeds poison, envy among rivals, resentment that festers. Refusal is impossible. It insults imperial generosity. Thus women are trapped. Every kindness is weaponized. Every reward hides punishment. The 14th rule reaches beyond the palace walls. A concubine's family is never free. Their reputations, their marriages, their futures are collateral. To fail the emperor is not merely to risk one's own life. It is to condemn parents, siblings, unborn generations. The women carry this invisible weight always. Even in their most private moments, they are not alone. The faces of their families loom in memory, silent witnesses to every act of submission. The 15th rule confronts age, and it is merciless. As concubines grow older, they must remain desirable without showing effort. They must fade gracefully yet still compete, men are their replacements even as those same protégés eclipse them. Beauty rituals grow desperate. Lead-based powders poison their skin. Dangerous treatments scar their bodies. Some starve themselves. Others exhaust themselves, all in the hope of halting time. The fortunate die young, spared the slow collapse of value in the emperor's eyes. The 16th rule speaks of death, and it is the darkest of all. When the emperor dies, his concubines face a choice that is no choice at all. The 16th rule reveals a cruel fate that follows the emperor's death. His concubines do not simply outlive him. They are bound to his shadow. Some are forced into ritual suicide, buried with him as eternal companions. Others are locked away in hidden palaces, condemned to live out their years in silence and isolation. Whether through death or confinement, their identities vanish with his last breath. The message is clear. Their existence is inseparable from his. When he ceases, so do they. Together, these 16 rules form the architecture of a prison without walls, a system that controlled not only the bodies of women, but their thoughts, emotions, memories, and very sense of self. Each regulation appears precise, almost ceremonial, yet the effect is devastating. Individuality is dissolved, intimacy is weaponized, and survival itself becomes performance. History often remembers emperors as divine, as figures of majesty cloaked in silk and gold. But in the shadows of their palaces lived women whose stories were etched in silence, obedience, and fear. Their survival required intelligence, discipline, and resilience that defies imagination. And yet, their voices were deliberately muted, their humanity reduced to rules designed to erase them. What remains are whispers, fragments of forgotten lives that challenge the image of imperial glory. Behind every golden throne stood women who bore chains no one could see, bound not by iron but by ritual, by fear, and by the impossible demands of power. They may volunteer to be buried with him, secure in their honor and their family's safety, or they may live on, widows forever marked by association with dead sovereign, forbidden to remarry or bear children of their own. From the moment a woman enters the harem, she is taught to prepare for this final bargain. She must cultivate a relationship with death, learn to regard it not as an end, but as a consummation of duty. She writes letters to her family explaining her choice, composes poems that mythologize her devotion, participates in her own legend even as she arranges the details of her own destruction. The 17th rule is resistance, and here the ingenuity of these women is most luminous. Despite the architecture of control, they find ways to preserve their humanity and one another. Secret tongues are spun from ordinary phrases. Coded glances and private rituals stitch lives back together beneath the official performances. Resistance can be small, a look held too long, a song hummed ever so slightly off-key, an arrangement of flowers that spells out a hidden message only other concubines can read. Sometimes it is greater. Desperate escape plans, hidden pregnancies kept from watchful eyes, even plots that end in tragic sacrifice. Those who risk such rebellion know the cost. They choose brief passages of sovereign rule over years of orchestrated invisibility. The 18th rule is love, the most treacherous of all. Genuine affection is forbidden. Yet the women must manufacture love with such fidelity that it becomes indistinguishable from truth. They must simulate intimacy while preserving enough distance to survive the inevitable dismissal. This is a perilous tightrope. Some fall into authentic love and are destroyed by it. Others harden into beings incapable of feeling. The rare few who find equilibrium trade sanity for skill, becoming performers so flawless they lose sight of what is genuinely theirs. The 19th rule concerns the emperor's death and exposes the ultimate disposability of the concubines. When one regime falls, those who serve to become dangerous relics of the past. Holders of secrets, witnesses to acts the new order would rather forget. The new sovereign has choices. Purge them, neutralize them, or exile them. The fortunate are sent to distant temples to take the robes of a nun. Others simply vanish without record. Some are kept alive but humiliated, relegated to the lowest tiers of palace life as a warning to future generations. Their fates are rarely recorded in official histories. The 20th and final rule is forgetting, a cruel loop that returns us to the corridor where the story began. Those who survive must learn to bury everything they have endured. They become blank vessels, ready to be repainted with new roles and new identities. But forgetting is not erasure. Memory lodges itself in the body and the unconscious, surfacing in nightmares, sudden panics, and a lifelong inability to trust love or believe in one's worth. The scars remain invisible but ineradicable. The women carry them always, walking testimonies to a system that prized beauty far above humanity. Standing once more in that same narrow passage, older and more wary, you understand at last that the strange rules of the Imperial Harem were not about sex. They were about power, the power to convert people into objects, to turn love into choreography, to make life and survival contingent on the complete surrender of self. The eunuch who first whispered these decrees is long dead, laid to rest in an unmarked grave like so many who served the Forbidden City. The emperor you once knew has been succeeded by his son, and the son by his son, in a weary procession of dynastic exchange. The rules persist, passed down as a secret language from one generation of women to the next. You have survived by learning to forget how to be human, and by perfecting the art of becoming a shadow. You have mastered performance of desire, the simulation of submission, and the delicate navigation of a world where a single misstep means death. Now, as you prepare to pass these same rules to another frightened 18-year-old, you realize with a cold clarity that you have become the system you once feared. You are the link between past and future, the keeper of knowledge that should have died with the last emperor. You are the reason these rules endure, no matter how many dynasties rise and fall. The girl before you has the same wide eyes you once had, the same hopeful belief that she is about to enter a world of luxury and honor. You know the truth. She is stepping into a place where the strangest rule of all is this. To survive, you must learn to forget that you were ever human. In the flicker of candlelight, your voice carries the weight of centuries as you speak. You weave another invisible chain, and the endless cycle of power and submission turns on. Somewhere beyond the corridor, water trickles from ornamental fountains, the very sound that welcomed you when you first arrived, and the sound that will greet countless girls yet to come. The faces change, the rules do not.